by ditching most of the $90 billion in tax cuts they promised voters last year at the general election. Let's talk live to the party's head of policy, Zia Yusuf, who is here this evening. Thank you for talking to the Newsnight audience. When the Institute for Fiscal Studies said of your contract last year, your manifesto at the general election, your sums didn't add up, they were right, weren't they? And today you've proved it.
Well, Reform sadly did not win the last general election. Labour did. And what we have seen since then, sadly, we have a drunken sailor at the tiller of this great country, the ship of the United Kingdom.
You were drunken sailors, if I may. You were drunken sailors. $150 billion a year in spending cuts you promised, $50 billion increase in public spending a year, and $90 billion in tax cuts a year, which you've now ditched, which were fantasy economics, if you're being honest.
So the first thing to say about the contract with the people, the manifesto for the last election, what was not going to happen, had we won the last general election, was that all of those things would have been implemented immediately. And what we're saying today is, sadly, the Labour government is going to borrow £40 billion more than they originally committed to. According to Capital Economics, Rachel Reeves is going to raise taxes at the fastest rate of any chancellor in 55 years.
And I really, in the limited time that we have, I really want to concentrate.
The public finances have been wrecked by the Tories and Labour, and Reform are going to restore them.
Okay, so you say. You said today you want to cut public spending first, were you to win the next election, with the aim eventually of being able to afford tax cuts for people. Last year, your contract was to cut public spending by £150 billion per year. Per year. Are you sticking to that figure?
We're going to materially reduce public spending. We're going to reduce the size of the state. Well, that's the work. Look, I'm the head of policy.
Sure.
And we've already got brilliant people working on this.
So what's
we've already announced tens of billions of pounds, Victoria.
What's the total figure per year?
It's going to be tens of billions of pounds. And
so is
that is the work
less
that we're
than
currently
100
doing.
billion?
But Victoria, we are in a position where the national deficit is 4% of GDP. National debt is closing in on £3 trillion, and the cost of servicing the interest payments on the debt, Victoria, are going to be £4,000 per household in the UK.
I'm not asking why.
By the end of this parliament.
I'm not asking why you want to cut public spending.
So that's why Nigel Farage is taking. I believe Nigel will be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and if that happens, if that's the verdict that the British electorate decides to deliver, he is going to be the person who is sober about this, who is serious about this.
Mr. Yusuf, you're head of policy. Nigel Farage believes there's going to be an election the year after next. How much, please tell voters, are you going to cut public spending by per year?
Well, as I said, we've already announced north of £25 billion of cuts in public spending.
Is that
we were going to give, we've got more to come. There's going to be more to come in that regard. Okay. But the message today was a very clear one, which is, sadly, we have the Labour government that is borrowing far more than they committed to, raising taxes at a rate unseen in 55 years. And as a result of that, Victoria, people watching this programme, they are sick and tired of their taxes going up year after year after year to fund a bloated state that prioritises foreign citizens over UK citizens.
You now can't promise to cut taxes if you were.
Look, as we saw from Liz Truss, it's very easy to promise. If Reform truly was a populist party that would promise everything to everybody, we would have gone for a headline-grabbing set of tax cuts. What we're saying is we cannot cut taxes credibly until we have the public finances under control.
Now, every voter watching knows, because they're Newsnight viewers and they lived through austerity in the 2010s, that saving tens of billions, and I appreciate you haven't given us a figure, but at least 25 billion, requires a lot more than a crackdown on a bit of waste and cutting some civil service jobs. Everyone knows it will almost certainly mean cuts to the quantity or quality of public services. Is that fair?
Not necessarily. So the numbers that we've already talked about, so for example, restricting UK, look, Reform believes, and Nigel believes, that UK welfare payments should only ever be paid to UK citizens. That will save at least 10 billion a year. That's just based on universal credit alone.
Right.
Then we can talk about deporting people who are here illegally rather than housing them at the cost of British taxpayers. That is
But are you
4 billion a
actually
year of
saying,
savings.
are you actually suggesting that there won't be any pain with this kind of austerity when it comes to public services?
We are talking about reducing the size of the state in order that we can allow people to keep more of the money that they earn. We are going to champion the people who set their alarm clocks in the evening before they go to bed and
what I'm
rise
actually
early to go
asking
to
you
work.
is a different thing. Are you telling voters there will be no pain with Reform UK's austerity?
No, I don't think that's a reasonable reflection of what we're saying. But what we are saying, first and foremost...
So who will feel the pain?
Well, again, let's start with foreign nationals. It is unacceptable.
No British citizens.
It is unacceptable.
No
it
British
is unacceptable.
citizens.
It is unacceptable that foreign nationals are able to claim universal credit, they're able to claim disability payments, they're able to get social housing. The majority of social housing in London...
I understand.
...goes to foreign nationals.
I just want to be clear.
This is unknown in any other country in the world.
I understand. Are you saying no British citizens will feel any pain from Reform UK's austerity?
Well, our message to the British people, Victoria, is this: we are closing in on £3 trillion of national debt.
Please, could you answer my question?
Well,
are you saying no British people will feel
Victoria,
pain from
we are on the side
austerity?
of the people who set their alarm clocks before they go to bed and rise early in the morning.
What does that even
people
mean?
Who work, Victoria, and people who I think quite rightly look at the size of the state and look at how their taxpayer money is spent, where they don't feel safe, where the NHS is not there when they need them.
It sounds like you're saying if you're British and you set your alarm clock, you will not be affected by Reform UK's cuts.
Yeah, that's a reasonable reflection.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm glad we've finally got there. We've got that on record. Now, your party made big promises in local elections to cut waste in local councils, which you won control of back in May. The Reform leader of Kent County Council said Kent was the shop window through which everybody is going to see what a Reform government might look like, and she instructed everyone to cut wasteful spending. Let's see how that's going in Kent. Reform's cabinet member for adult social care in Kent told the FT last month the council, quote, is already down to the bare bones, and she thinks it likely you'll be raising Reform in Kent will be raising council tax next year by 5%. That is the maximum. When you promise savings, don't you think voters thought that would mean council tax coming down?
No, I don't, because I think
Really?
voters understand that two things can be true at the same time. Kent County Council. So first of all, Reform councils, we control 10 councils as of 6 months ago. Reform councils have already identified hundreds of millions of pounds of savings. Kent alone, £63 million of savings. And yet
council tax is going to go up.
Well, that's because the vast majority, and this is the part that voters do understand, that the vast majority of the budgets of local councils is statutory, of which councillors of any stripe have absolutely no say nor influence on the parameters of.
Reform leaders of West Northamptonshire, Durham County Council, Staffordshire County Council, they're all having to consider raising council tax to the maximum. In Durham, before the local elections, they were promising on leaflets that Reform would fight for lower council tax.
Yeah, so Victoria, I've spent time in all of those councils, and it is just a fact of the matter that the vast majority of the budgets of those councils, the Reform councillors or any other councillors, have no say over the parameters of the recipients of that social care. And if you go to the IFS's own website, when central government, when Westminster decides how much money any of those councils get to fund social care, those vital services, they do so literally on the assumption that those councils will raise council tax by the amounts that we're talking about. So until Reform is in power in Westminster, which is obviously what we're working towards, Reform will be unable to change the parameters. But I will say this, at least Reform has not fallen into bankruptcy like many Tory and Labour councils have.
I want to ask you about Nigel Farage's economic judgment. On the day of Liz Truss's mini-budget, he tweeted it was the best Conservative budget since 1986. Why should voters trust his economic judgment at all after that?
Because he stood up in front of the press, in front of the country today, and said, if he's the next Prime Minister of this country, then look, we've got to get the public finances in order before we commit to tax cuts.
He knew that Liz Truss's mini-budget had announced unfunded tax cuts, and yet he still tweeted that was the best Tory budget for 40 years.
Yeah, and he's upgraded his systems as a result of that.
What?
And we had a chancellor.
He's upgraded his systems?
Yeah, he has seen what has happened as a result of bond markets saying we're going to make British mortgages for British people. People watching this programme know what happened.
He got it wrong.
Well, at the time,
At the time, he got it wrong.
He backed the idea of lower taxes for people. Liz Truss,
unfunded.
Liz Truss did not announce commensurate spending cuts, and then Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor,
and he still, and Mr. Farage still backed it.
I put it to you, Victoria, that people watching this programme appreciate somebody who is capable of looking at the data and upgrading their assumptions as a result of that. And that is why Reform are not going to make the same mistakes that Liz Truss did.
OK. Can I ask you finally about Nathan Gill, Reform's former leader in Wales, who will be sentenced soon for taking cash bribes to make pro-Russia statements while he was a member of the European Parliament. Mr. Farage says he was shocked when he heard about that, and he knew Nathan Gill well. Is there anyone else in your party who could be taking bribes from pro-Russian politicians?
I don't believe so. Look, I've never met Nathan Gill.
So.
I've never met Nathan Gill. Just to be clear, it was long before my time inside the party.
I'm asking about now. And you say you don't believe so?
What Nathan Gill did was treacherous. He has pleaded guilty.
I'm asking about
we condemn it in the strongest possible terms, Victoria. I've never met him. I was the chairman for a significant period of time over the last year. I've never met the guy. Nigel did know him from his time as an MEP, but I will tell you this, what Reform care about are the British people. We care about putting their needs first. Of course we condemn that treachery in the strongest possible terms.
Could there be anyone in your party who could be taking bribes from pro-Russian politicians?
Of course not.
Right, because a few moments ago you said, I don't believe so. Now you're emphatic.
Well, of
course
not. I've
know?
literally never met the guy.
No, how do you know?
And it was long ago. When he was the Welsh leader for Reform were polling at sub 1% in Wales, Victoria. As a start-up party, this is ancient history as far as Reform.
You've just told our audience on the second answering that no, of course not, no one else is taking bribes from pro-Russian politicians. How do you know that?
Well, I know that in the same way any other politician from any other party would know that. I know the people who are around Nigel. Again, let me reiterate, I have never met Nathan Gill, nor have I ever spoken to him.
No worries.
And I only got involved with the party full-time post the general election. There is nobody like that inside the party at the moment. And I will tell you this too, again, the people watching this programme care about the cost of living, they care about secure borders, and it's very easy to point to this. I will say this again, we condemn it in the strongest possible terms. Okay. That is ancient history as far as Reform are concerned.
Thank you very much for being with us this evening and talking to our audience. We appreciate it.